And let me just go ahead and introduce you to our small but noble group. Rebekka Helford, her MA and LMFT, earned her bachelor's degree in psychology from Brown University and her master's degree in clinical psychology with an emphasis in marriage and family therapy from Pepperdine University. Rebekka has held over 20 years of experience working with young children and their families and will discuss her two-armed parenting approach that combines firm limits with a lot of emotional validation. Thank you so much for agreeing to be here today, Rebekka. The floor is yours.
Thank you so much. I always leave off of those official bios the most important part of my experience, which is the fact that I have two children of my own that are alive and well and watching TV right now, because sometimes that's what happens. But I like to say that my children, they're 11 and 7 now, all of that information about my degrees and stuff, that's just, fancy pieces of paper for them. And they kick my butt every day and remind me that I'm still learning and working on being the best parent that I can be. So this isn't by any means me saying, I've figured out how to do this perfectly. It's actually harder for me. And I don't necessarily know more than any of you. I just happened to get here before you did. I've been in the parenting pipeline for a long time and then helping parents and families for a long time before that. So, as my former mentor used to say, I wear my not knowing on my sleeve. We're all trying to figure this out together. It's a lot of sort of failing forward, this job of parenting. It's very humbling. So, with that in mind, I know that all of you have rather young kiddos, and those are some of my favorite people. I often say that toddlers are my favorite people because you always know where you stand with them. They will tell it straight to your face, whether they like you or whether they think you are total garbage, and they will not pull their punches about that. So today we're going to think about limit setting and how do you do that? Something that I discovered in getting on this parenting journey is that I didn't really have a very good model for limit setting from how I grew up. And especially when we come from a place where we don't have a good model, or maybe we have a model that's the opposite of what we'd like to do, it doesn't actually help us in the moment figure out what we should be doing or how we do want to do it. So hopefully tonight's presentation will give you some ideas, and then I'm going to leave plenty of time at the end for your questions, because I know there's always but how do I apply this to my specific child, my specific situation? So I've got a little slideshow for you, and I also, this will be available to you later. So actually, before I do this, I'm going to share in the chat, and then you will have this for later, the link to this, right? So actually, hold on a second. Let me do one thing at a time. This is the link to the slideshow, and you can access it at any time. And if you are watching, and if you are somewhere that you can do this, hold please, you can access the slideshow from your phone or other device while you are following along. So you can follow along at home with the home version of this by scanning this QR code. So I'll give you all a second to do that. You can just take a little screenshot if you want to, or you can snap it with your phone. You can follow along. The slides are also available on my website, and I'll give you a link to that later. So it's helpful to start with defining terms so that we're all on the same page about what I mean, at least when I say, what are we talking about here? What's a limit? What's a boundary? This is not just semantic nitty gritties. This is really helpful in terms of thinking about our roles and responsibility as parents and our children's roles and responsibilities as well. So these are terms as I set them up. Other folks may use this distinction as well. So what's a limit? I use limit to think about controlling someone else's behavior. So a limit is about something that someone else may or may not do. So my child is doing something and I need them to do something else. It's time to do this now. Or If they need to do something and they're having a hard time doing it, I'm going to say, I'm going to help you do that. Or I might tell them, you may not do that. That's less helpful. I'll tell you more about why later. But a limit is about controlling, changing, navigating someone else's behavior. What's a request? Well, a request is an invitation for someone else to do something. And they can say yes or no. And either answer is okay. It really has to be okay. And they can change their answer at any time from a yes to a no or a no to a yes. The nonviolent communication way of expressing a request is, would you be willing to? Right? Or would you like to? So sometimes with children, we will have a limit in mind. Like, for example, it might be time to get in the car seat, which is not negotiable. That's not a choice. But we might phrase it like a request. You want to get in the car seat? And then we've just created a power struggle for our small child because to them it sounds like a request. And requests you can say no to. And no is the favorite word of any toddler, right? Any yes or no question, the answer is always going to be no. So by framing limits as requests, we're actually inviting power struggles. So just notice, is that something I'm doing with my language? Okay, so we have limits, we have requests, and we have boundaries. What's a boundary? A boundary is about what I do or don't do. And it doesn't rely on anybody else's compliance, right? So this is why, when people say they're not respecting my boundaries, well, if it's really a boundary, meaning something you will or will not do, it has nothing to do with other people respecting it. So this is I will or I will not. For example, if my child is yelling at me, I can't make them stop yelling. You might have noticed you can't make your child stop yelling, but I can leave. So I don't want to be yelled at. I'm leaving. I'm leaving the room to take a break. I'm taking a break. I am moving my body. Or I'm going to go put my earplugs in because my ears hurt from the yelling. That's something I'm going to do, right? Or I've done this in the car when like kids are fighting or screaming in the car. I don't drive unless it's quiet in the car. And if my kids are screaming or fighting, I pull over and then I get out of the car and I like sort of sit on the sidewalk until it's quiet. I don't drive unless it's quiet because that's not safe. Right. So that's about my behavior. Okay. So just keep that in mind. Those are kind of the tools that you have going into this discussion of limits. I want you to think about the number of limits you're setting, because if we're talking about limits, you're talking about controlling and changing someone else's behavior, which is hard to do. You have to really follow through and commit. It requires energy. And so I think about it like this. If you've ever gone to the grocery store and been like, I only need a few things. I'm just going to grab a basket. Okay, I need cereal. Great, I got the cereal. Oh gosh, I forgot the jam. Okay, I get the jam. I forgot the milk. And pretty soon, the next thing you think, maybe I need that, you're going to have to be very judicious. Do I really need that? Because my arm's starting to get tired. I can't lift this basket anymore. It's the same way with limits. You cannot carry that many firm limits as a parent because each one is heavy. It weighs a lot in terms of time, energy, and effort to follow through with each limit. So it's worth it to consider with your partner, with your co-parenting team, how many hard limits are we holding? Because if you have more than 5 collectively, just know that that's going to be very costly and demanding for you. The fewer hard limits you have, the easier your life is. Then you can have softer limits. And if it's not working today, you can say, you know what, today I'm changing my mind on that. But just be mindful, what's in my limit basket? Okay. So people have asked me this question, why do you set a limit? When do I get to set a limit, right? When we were little and we would ask our parents, well, why can't I do that? They would say, well, because I said so, or something. Not a great reason. So what are the great reasons to set a limit with your young child? Well, I kind of made a list for people in order of importance, right? And I think of this as a job description for a parent, right? When it comes to what am I here to do at minimum, this is sort of the minimum requirements in my mind about being a parent. And they speak to the kinds of limits that are really important that we set. So I call this my 5-point parenting plan. And I tell my children this all the time. If you went out there and asked them right now, hey, what's Rebekka's job? They would tell you this. So you can be transparent with your children too. Even a 3-year-old could understand this job description. So I'll tell my children, my job is to keep you safe, healthy, and clean, and to help you with big feelings and solve problems. Okay. So safe and healthy, most people can get behind that, right? Like I will set a limit about we don't eat Tide Pods, right? No matter how much you want them, no matter how big a tantrum you throw, I'm going to be very clear inside myself that that is an uncrossable limit. That's going in the basket, right? Clean is sort of a subset of safe and healthy, but it's a little different because, you don't need to take a bath every day. You don't need to wash your hair every day, but in my mind, you do need to wash your hands every time you go to the potty, right? Or you do need to wash your hands, after you've been playing in the dirt, things like that. And cleanliness is kind of one of those power struggle things where you are acting on a child's body, and toddlers love autonomy. They love to be in charge of themselves. So, you have to sort of figure out which clean things are in the limit basket and which ones are, okay, I can see today is not a bath day. I'm going to give you a quick wipe down and, you know, we'll have a bath tomorrow. Helping with big feelings and helping solve problems in that order, because I don't solve problems when people are upset. I don't change plans or make plans when people are upset. So if someone's upset because they want something, like, give me the cookie or give me the yogurt, even if I'm okay with giving them the cookie or the yogurt, there's a big feeling there. And I don't solve problems when there are big feelings. We've got to get through those big feelings and then we solve problems. And my job is to help children with big feelings because biologically, they are bad at navigating big feelings. They're also bad at solving problems and they need help and scaffolding to do those things. So with these ideas in mind, you can start to think about what sorts of limits are going to go in the basket all the time and which ones are sort of optional limits. More limits that you might want to consider have to do with values and culture. In other words, the way we do things in our home. That might be everything from do we wear shoes in the house or not? Do we jump on the couch or not? To do we go to church on Sunday? Do we go to synagogue on Friday? Do we do things differently at grandma's house than we do at our house? You are absolutely allowed to set limits for your own convenience and willingness as a parent because you are people, right? So if your child is melting down because there's no more Cheerios and you could go to the store and get more Cheerios, but it's not very convenient for you, you don't have to go to the store to get more Cheerios. Just because you could and it's not a safety or health issue doesn't mean you have to. And it's okay. You're not a bad parent if you don't. It's all right for you to parent from the place of, I'm going to help you with that big feeling, right? I'm going to help you get through that big, I don't have Cheerios feeling. And then when we get to the end of that feeling, we'll solve the I don't have Cheerios problem, right? That problem doesn't need to be solved by you going to the store. So you absolutely have my permission to set a limit for convenience or willingness. Okay, so that's why do you set a limit? Now, what about how, right? Because the how really matters. And certainly some of us come from settings where limits might have been set in a my way or the highway kind of way, right? In a more authoritarian kind of way. And we can absolutely set limits in ways that are more authoritative, meaning there's a balance in being respectful and also being firm. So these are some of the principles that I kind of hold on to when I'm thinking about limit setting and when I'm supporting my clients and parent coaching clients to set limits. An important principle is being clear, right? Being transparent about what the limits are, how they're going to be enforced, when they're going to be enforced. So a lot of times what can happen is parents will realize a limit needs to be set as something is happening, and then do something to enforce that limit without letting the child know what's going on. Sometimes that happens, right? Like if your child is a new walker and they've never encountered a crosswalk before and they dart off, you might need to like run and grab their hand or something like that. I've certainly had to go and tackle one of my children when they ran a little too far. And whenever possible, you want to establish clear expectations in advance so everybody knows what you're supposed to be doing, right? What people may and may not do, what you will and will not do. So, for example, if we're going to the park, right, and going to the park always has an end time, it's important to let kids know in a way that a kid can understand how much time we're going to be spending at the park and when that time is coming to a close, as well as how you're going to make that transition, right? Otherwise, it's going to be very upsetting for them. Transitions are really hard for kids. They're hard for everybody. But to be able to say to them, hey, we're going to the park. We're going to play until right before lunchtime, or we're going to play until snack time. We're going to have a snack at the park, and then we're going to hold hands and go to the car. Okay. And then you can let them know, don't give warnings, but give notice. Okay, we're almost ready for our snack. You're going to get to do 3 more swings, or you're going to go down the slide 2 more times, or you can let them collaborate. How many more slides do you want to do? Right. And then we're going to go. When people say, well, I gave them a warning, even young children understand that warnings mean something bad's going to happen. So do yourself a favor and don't make it harder than it is. Just say, hey, I'm going to let you know, or you get to do this many more things, and then we're going to go. Don't say this is a warning. Also, time is weird for kids. Don't like 5 minutes, 2 minutes. That doesn't really make any sense to them. But you can use that in terms of you get to do this many more things at the park. You get to play. You get to do, 1 more hide and seek with your friend, right? That's the kind of incremental notice that is helpful for a small child. This is a really important one. The acceptable alternative or positive opposite. This comes from the positive behavior movement. Kids under the age of 3 don't understand reverse construction, meaning they don't understand no, not, don't. If you don't believe me, then next time you're with your child, go up to them and say, hey, which one's not yellow? Which one's not yellow? And if they point to this one, they're showing you they don't understand reverse construction, meaning not, right? This makes sense developmentally because there's a lot of actually cognitive engineering that goes behind understanding the reverse. You have to know what it is. You have to kind of think about what would the other thing be. And when it comes to behavior, no, not, don't is really confusing because not doing one thing means an infinite number of other things that you could be doing. It's also, you have to slow down and think about, well, what could that be? And sometimes you need them to act pretty quickly, like if they're going somewhere they shouldn't go, right? So framing what you do want your child to do is going to be your best friend here. And you might realize in trying to do this that that's hard. We're so used to saying no, not, don't, stop, that we actually don't know what we do want them to do, right? So stop touching that, which your child just hears as touching that. What do we want them to do? Hands in pockets, right? Or you can look like this, right? Or stop playing around in the tub. Well, what do we want them to do? It's time to get out of the tub, right? Or I've got your towel, let me help you out. Getting out of the tub, right? This is another place where we can get into yes or no questions with kids, right? Where we might ask them, hey, do you want to do this? And they'll say no. So again, avoid asking questions and give a clear, acceptable alternative or positive opposite for the thing your child is doing. That may require some thought. One night, my younger child was, she was fiddling around with her fingers at bedtime. And it was like super interesting for her, but very distracting. It was keeping her from settling down and going to sleep. And I wanted to say, stop playing with your fingers. But again, not very helpful. So I had to think, what is the positive opposite? What's an acceptable alternative to this fiddle with your fingers thing that will get the desired behavior, which is her settling down? And I said, oh, can you show me flat hands? Right. So that's another thing you can say here is, can you show me? Right. Can you show me looking eyes? Can you show me flat hands? Can you show me quiet body? Things like that. And toddlers like to show you things, they like to show off. So, kind of making it about, hey, can you show me your quietest hands? Can you show me your quietest body? Is going to be more fruitful than saying, don't, no, stop, don't. Okay. This is possibly one of the most important things you can do when you're setting a limit. Let's say we go back to our example of it's time to get in the car seat. Whenever you're setting a limit, expect dysregulation. Okay. So setting ourselves up well for limit setting is really important. If you expect immediate compliance, which some people call listening, that's not really listening. When we say listening, we mean immediate obedience or compliance. And that's a skill that takes time to build. So, particularly for young children, it's a setup for us as parents to expect that our children will comply to verbally given commands at the first statement, particularly if it's asking them to do something that they don't prefer or asking them to transition away from something that they're enjoying, right? So let's say it's time to get in the car seat. I've walked my child to the car. It's time to get in the car seat. And my kid says, no, no car seat, no car seat. I'm going to expect that. I'm going to say, oh, yeah, yeah, you don't want to get in the car seat. I'm going to expect them to melt down and I'm going to respond with co-regulation. What is co-regulation? Well, you can see my two little hugging people here. Co-regulation shows up before self-regulation, right? So if we're thinking about regulation, it's the ability to go from a state of not feeling good to feeling okay, right? We can't do that on our own until we learn it from another. How do we learn it from another? We borrow their calm. So the best thing you can do in the face of your child's normal expected dysregulation when you set a limit is to be chill, to find your calm, to speak in a low, slow, empathic voice, right? Breathe, put a little smile on your face, and don't freak out. That communicates nonverbally to your child. This situation is unpleasant, but not threatening, right? So throughout all of this, we're going to be holding two arms as we relate to our children. And this is a metaphor from my mentor, Diane Reynolds, that when we relate to our children, but really anyone, we have two arms. With one arm, we hold the feeling, and with the other arm, we hold the line. Holding the feeling is empathy. Holding the line is keeping the limit firm. We can do both. So when our child is dysregulating because of a limit that we've set, and you have expected it, you're like, yep, of course, of course. No one likes to hear no. We can respond by acknowledging that that's not something they wanted. My mentor calls this the language of intentions, which sounds like this. Oh, you really wanted X, and you didn't like it when Y happened. You really wanted to play around the car, and you didn't like it when I said, time to put on the car seat, or time to sit in the car seat. Oh, you really wanted a cookie, and you didn't like it when I said it's time for dinner. Notice how there's not a lot of feeling words in there. There's really no feeling words. I'm just naming what they wanted what they intended, and how reality is not lining up with their expectations. I'm not dropping that limit because they're uncomfortable. I'm holding the feeling, yeah, you wanted this. And I'm holding the line. You're not going to get it. Another way of putting this, another tool for your toolbox here is Harvey Karp's fast food rule. So Harvey Karp wrote Happiest Baby on the Block, Happiest Toddler on the Block. And in Happiest Toddler on the Block, he says, when you go to a fast food restaurant, you place your order at the window. And what's the first thing that happens? Well, you say to them, I want a double animal style with cheese fries. The first thing that happens is they say back to you, you want a double animal style with cheese fries. Is that right? They repeat your order back to you. So with our toddlers, it's really helpful to slow things down and offer empathy by repeating their order back, right? In other words, what they wanted. You want to play around in the car, right? You want to play in the car for some more. You don't want to get in your car seat, right? We repeat the order back until they feel heard. And we do that before we add any information, right? Something that I say a lot is, and you can stick this in your back pocket, I hear you. You really want my no to turn into a yes. And my no isn't going to change. What happens a lot, I hear this from parents a lot, and I experience this a lot because my children are normal human children who get disappointed when they hear no. They wear you down by saying, please, 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 can I just a little bit, 5 more minutes, please, no, I don't want to, not this, da, 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 da. And, sometimes we just say yes just to make all that stop, because it's so annoying. And it really is. This is something else you can do instead. I hear you. You really want me to say yes to this. You want me to change my no. My no is not going to change. And that's strengthening for you as a parent. Like you're almost declaring it to yourself as much as to your child. Like I'm going to hold this limit. Now, if you're going to do that, it better be one of the ones in the basket, right? Like one that's very important to you in terms of health, safety, family values, right? And if it's not, well, you can be flexible, right? So I have parents say, well, what happens if I change my mind? Is my child not going to think that I'm the authority? Am I going to lose my parental authority if I go back on what I said? And to that, I say, your mind will change as a parent. Of course, the limits are going to change. What's appropriate for your child at 6 months of age is not going to be appropriate for an 18-month-old, is not going to be appropriate for a 3-year-old, a 5-year-old, 8-year-old, 10-year-old. The limits that are appropriate are going to change. You're going to need to change the limits over time, right? So what's more important is consistency with flexibility. You can change your mind. If you do, be transparent about why and own that as a parent. You can invoke the members of your parenting team as well. Daddy and I have thought about it, or mommy and I have thought about it, or grandma and I have thought about it. And we've decided, sure, tonight we'll have pizza on the couch because it's pizza and movie night. So we're going to do that, even if it goes against a family rule, right? Now, this wouldn't be something in the limit basket. This would be more of a limit where there is flexibility. Or, hey, I've thought about it and it seems like tonight is not the night for a bath. I think you're overtired and we're going to skip bath tonight and I'll just wipe down your, body with a washcloth. Appropriate limits do change over time. And if we can model flexibility for our children, we're actually teaching them in kind how to be flexible with us, right? It's very frustrating when toddlers and young children are rigid and get stuck and back themselves into a corner. How better to teach them flexibility than to model it for them? If we're overly rigid and we can never show them that we can change our minds about something, then how are they going to learn how to do that themselves? If you are heading into a situation where you want your child to be mindful of a particular limit, you want to make sure they heard you, right? And understood. The greatest failure of communication is the assumption that it has taken place, right? So, for example, let's say I am taking them to a park, but I want them to stay where I can see them. So there are certain areas that they may go to and certain areas that they may not go to. So I might look them in the eye. Okay. So no more lobbing instructions at the back of a child's head. If you want to give your child an instruction, set a limit, they should be close enough to touch, and you want to get their eyes. If you have their eyes, then you have their ears. And once you have their eyes, keep it short. So I might say, here's the park. You may play here, here, and here. You may not go over there. Got it? Where may you play? And have them repeat it back to me. If I'm setting a limit, I might not want to add okay at the end because it implies that I'm asking them if it's okay with them. It also turns it into a yes or no question. So it might be like, no more cookies, okay? To which your kid might say, no, okay. Right? So you can check for understanding by saying, got it? What's the limit? Remind me, where can we play? And I'll do this. I'll put my hand by my ear and go, remind me, where can we play? And make it as short as possible, right? Because they have a limited attention span. So keep it short and sweet. Once a limit is set, you might need some help to hold it. Sometimes kids struggle with particular limits because they're missing certain skills, right? So let's say one of the limits in your basket is we clean up our messes. Okay, well, that's a skill. And parents of kids of all ages will come to me going, oh, my kid just won't clean up their mess. Well, depending on the age of your child, they may be missing key skills that enable them to notice that there's a mess, plan and conceive of the idea of clean, plan the steps that go from mess to clean, and then execute all those steps in sequence, right? That's a lot of executive function there. So if your child is struggling to follow a limit like that, we clean up our messes, then you may need to help them build those skills. For example, by taking a picture of what clean looks like and posting it somewhere near the toy area and saying, make it look like this. You might need to do skill building, like we put them away like this. You might need to do scaffolding, where you do part of it and you model some of it and they do some of it, right? While you're doing all of that, while you're setting a limit, particularly limits that are difficult for your child, such as we visit the doctor, right? Depending on the age of your child, they may not like that. And that's a non-negotiable. We visit the doctor, or we sit in our car seat, or we always wash our hands after we go to the potty. Your child may have a hard time with that limit. We need to be patient and kind to ourselves. It's going to feel really rough, particularly if you come from a background where children pushing back against adults is seen as disrespectful and children are praised as good for being compliant and obedient. It might be very triggering when your child, in a totally developmentally normal way, pushes back against your limits. So, an acronym that you can use to help yourself here is one that comes from Mr. Chaz. He's a really fun content creator who does conscious discipline. He says Q-tip, quit taking it personally, right? It is not personal when your child, your toddler, your teenager, your tween pushes back on your limits, right? That's not a bad child. You're not a bad parent. Um, maintaining your own patience and calm will help you to A, keep them calm and regulated, or help them find their calm. And then B, um, help navigate the situation and help them build the skills that they need to do or be able to follow the limit that you're asking them to follow. If a child is unwilling or unable to complete or get their body to do the thing that's in your non-negotiable limit basket, you are going to need to follow through. You're going to need to help their body do the thing, or you're going to need to use your boundaries to stop the action or redirect the action. So, for example, I have this hard rule of I drive when it's quiet because it's dangerous for me if kids are yelling in the car. So, for me, if kids are yelling in the car, every time I stop the car. That's my follow through, right? Or for we wear our seatbelts. We sit in our car seat when we're in the car. Car doesn't start. And that might mean we don't go to playgroup, or we don't go to the store, or we sit and wait, and the child might have a really hard time. And yeah, I know it's really hard. And we only drive when everyone's buckled into their car seat. So that's why you have to manage your limit basket really ruthlessly, because that takes time, effort, energy, and patience to have that kind of follow through for your non-negotiables. Okay, so that's kind of my boilerplate, some top line ideas. I recognize that you're going to have some questions, so I'm going to open it up for some questions, but I'm also available for private parent coaching, parent ed, professional development. You can scan this QR code to get to my website. You can call me, you can email me, you can check out my blog and podcast, and or sign up for my newsletter. And if you would like to be added to my newsletter, you can drop your email address in the chat and I can add it. It's a very periodic newsletter. I'll never give your information to anybody else. And I usually offer a lot of resources for parents because resources are my love language. And I also, speaking of resources are my love language, here are a few for you. There are so many parenting books out there, right? It can be hard to filter through the noise, what's good, what could be better. These are two that you will not regret reading. Whole Brain Child is in my top 5 of all time. Dan Siegel and Tina Payne Bryson, both Los Angeles psychologists. Well, Dan Siegel's a psychiatrist, Tina Payne Bryson's a psychologist, and they bring neuroscience to the domain of parenting. Definitely give it a read. Listen to it if you have to. That's totally fine. Audiobooks are still books. Happiest Toddler in the Box by Harvey Karp, as I mentioned earlier, has all kinds of great ideas about how to speak with your children. If you like my ideas about the 2 arms of relating, I have a blog post and a podcast episode about that, as well as 2 different blog posts about limit setting, the topic of our talk today. And I'm going to open up the floor now for your questions, because I am sure you have them, and hop on.
Hi, this is Nicole Jane here. I have a 16-month-old. Thank you so much for your presentation. This is so helpful. I'm totally going to buy all the books that you recommended. My question's
Wonderful.
a little weird, but when is it a good time to say no? Like, when is it appropriate?
Okay. I call it the emergency no. And you want to save your emergency no for a 4-alarm fire situation, because you want that emergency no to stop your child dead in their tracks. Okay. So
Got
let's
it.
say,
Got it.
right, like, and I don't want to like blow anyone out the water, but it's like, no, like you would if your dog was lifting their leg, right? And so I'm over here, I've got my hands in the sink and they're wet, and I see my child walking towards something that they're about to pull, and I want them to stop dead in their tracks. I might go, no, across the room, right? Anything else, Yeah. Your child will not understand, particularly a 16-month-old. And it's kind of a running joke in some of my toddler classes where they'll go over to the outlet and they'll go, no, 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 and stick their finger on the socket because they've learned that this thing is called a no, no, no. Right? It doesn't mean anything to them. So if there's something that we don't want them to do, change the environment first. Childproofing is way better than you running around and having to say no to all the things. Childproofing will change that environment so that you don't have to go around, individually setting limits around all of the danger zones of your house. So save your emergency note for when you really need it.
Yeah. Rebekka, I just want to validate. Nicole, thank you for joining. I just wanted to just validate and give you an example. At UCLA, one of my teachers had a 6-month-old, or no, 8-month-old running towards the socket. And exactly what you said, she had 2 other infants on her, so she couldn't run fast enough to catch it. And I don't know why the socket was open that day. The outlet cover wasn't on it. And this is years ago, so you didn't have those back socket covers, which automatically, safe in the environment for the kids. And she said, Zoe, no. And she had, she hadn't heard Marissa, the teacher, say no in that voice. And it literally stopped her. And this is a infant, a mobile infant, but an infant. So it takes time to process that information. She stopped in her tracks just because of the tone of Marissa's voice. And she didn't yell.
It's the tone.
For a no. Yeah, it was the tone and the no. It was startling to her. She hadn't heard it before, but it worked. And so that's for me.
Got it. Okay, that's so helpful.
We can unintentionally take the power out of our no by becoming no machines, right?
Yeah.
So it's like, no, 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 no. It always sounds like that. And it goes up at the end. And that's actually very interesting to a child. They'll be like, oh, how can I get them to make that interesting sound again? Right? So the more you say your no, the less power it has, the more it just becomes background noise. So we actually preserve it because you're going to need its power here and there. Yeah.
Got it. All right. I got to log off, but that was so good. Ani, do you guys do this monthly or how does this all work?
You're welcome to join. We will put you on the list. So we'll make sure you can join. We try to have one every 2 months at least.
Perfect. Okay. Thanks, guys. Bye, Rebekka. Bye, Ani.
Bye, Nicole. Take care. Okay. I'm sure other folks have questions for me. So please feel free to jump on and offer your real life parenting situations, which I know you're going through.
I've got since we're waiting, I can tell you something I'm struggling with now. My son has 2 older step brothers, and I love them to pieces. They're 14 and 12, but they fight with each other like there's no. I have an only child. I haven't had siblings, so I haven't seen this kind of report. They love each other, but they fight with each other. Mm-hmm. Now I'm noticing my son being used as a tool, which is not cool. If the older one is younger, she'll say, Alexi, go hit Anthony. And I, of course, jump in and I stop it. But now I'm noticing Alexi doing this on his own, which I'm not thrilled about, So any advice there would be much
okay. How old is Alexi?
3.
He's 3. Okay. So, okay. There's a certain amount of rough and tumble play, rough housing. That's really normal for kids, and particularly for sort of boy gender kids, but really for all genders, but they're stereotypically with boys particularly. And there's a certain amount of that that's really good for kids because through rough and tumble play, you learn about your boundaries, you learn about your own strength, you feel big and strong. It's very good sensory input, right? There's all this sort of, you're getting deep pressure to your muscles. So it's actually regulating. All that rough housing is proprioceptive input for the body. So it can look like aggression. And look, there's a certain amount of good guy, bad guy stuff and normal aggression that preschoolers are all figuring out and integrating, right? Like they do good guys, they do bad guys, and eventually they figure out where they are in the middle, that we all contain both, Batman and the Joker, right, within us, right? Um, so we're a karate household, right? My husband is a fourth degree black belt in Kenpo karate. My children, my older one now outranks me. I was a purple belt. She's a blue belt. My younger one's testing for orange. So we we do a lot of structured physical hitting and kicking of each other. like um in service of learning about your boundaries, having good discipline, feeling strong, things like that. um so there's a piece of it where, like, they're not just beating up on each other for fun. There's a piece of it that has to be grounded in discipline. um and that's an important part of it, where, in the art of Kenpo, you only fight to defend yourself. Like, the best fights are the ones you never get into. um so when my two go at it with each other, which they do, we're like, oh, you want to spar? Okay, well, what are the rules for sparring? Okay. And then, like, the big one knows that she's got to control herself. She's got to control her punches and kicks. And she has to mostly block because she knows that the little one can't hurt her. And then, like, she has to use her moves and, like, things like, and my husband will be like, nope, no, break, break, okay. So things like that. So, like, you know, there's a piece of it where if you try to over control normal roughhousing, normal physical kind of play exploration, play fighting, you're actually making it more interesting, and you can't really shut that down. But can you supervise it? Can you create the limits for physical play, physical interaction, play fighting, right? And what would those limits be? Like, I would have a limit of, don't tell someone to go hit someone else. Like, if you've got a beef to pick with your sister or brother, you sort out your own problems, right? Don't get your younger one involved. If the little one wants to fight the bigger one, like, learn what happens when you pick on someone bigger than you. Like, when my little one gets frustrated with the big one and tries to solve her problem by hitting her, she learns really fast, like, no, big one's going to block you and then you're going to fall down. Like, she's not hurting you, she's just going to block you, and that's not going to feel good. So, like, there's an object lesson here in how do we solve problems? Remember my 5-point parenting plan. Help you be safe, healthy, clean, help you with big feelings, help you solve problems. This is an exercise in problem solving. Is this a good way of solving our problems? How's this going? You could even be like Columbo and be like, okay, I'm noticing we're trying to solve a problem by hitting each other. How's that going? Right? Like, and there's a piece in here where there are social skills involved, right? Like, if you hurt your sibling because you were play fighting and the play fighting got a little out of hand, or you weren't controlling yourself very well, you need to fix that, right? You need to not only apologize, but you need to make it right. And this gives you a chance to teach your child the important art of repair, right? So, not just a drive by sorry, not just an apology with no meat behind it, but when we cause harm to someone's body or feelings, we make it right again. So that means we say, are you okay? What do you need? We offer to get an ice pack or a washcloth. And we say, next time I'm going to, and we work on our behavior. We work on solving our problems in different ways. So, like, those are some of the things that I would be thinking about. Those are the things that I do think about when my children are going after each other. Because, I can't really stop them, but I can hold a frame in which there's something important and useful to gain. Um, so yes, I don't know. Is that helpful, Ani?
Very helpful. I actually like the idea of, I never even thought about it, embracing it in that manner. Yeah.
Yeah, they're
And
gonna do it.
Michael Gurian writes a lot about just like, if you're not looking at the ER, don't intervene. But it's so against my like just the gentle, approach. But it is definitely something, again, as an only child, I'm I am new to it, and I like the resilience, I like the recovery, I like the repair. And
Mhm.
I definitely see beauty in that too, that, as an only child, you may not have, you are maybe more sensitive to those issues because you didn't have someone sparring with you and then needing to, right?
Right. Well, look, there's this idea, and it's a beautiful one, that siblings are your first friends. Hopefully that's the case. But I think more importantly, they're your first enemies, you know, because life is full of conflict
Yeah.
and we all need help building those conflict resolution skills. Other people are very difficult. Have you noticed? Like there's nothing more difficult than another person. They have different ideas and plans. They think different thoughts. They like different things. They don't want to do it your way. And you're really motivated to find a way back to
Yeah.
togetherness with a sibling. I'm going to give you another book recommendation for any of you who do
Please.
have siblings. Siblings Without Rivalry. Siblings Without Rivalry by Elaine Favor and Adele Maslish. They wrote How to Talk So Kids Will Listen and Listen So Kids Will Talk. I don't have a very big top 5 list. Those are on my top 5 list, along with Whole Brain Child. Um, Siblings Without Rivalry gives you little scenarios that are common in life with multiple kids, including when there's conflict. And it's true. Like, unless it looks like there's going to be injury, you can be a mindful observer. You can bring your calm co-regulating presence and be sort of that Columbo parent. I may be dating myself by talking about Columbo, but be sort of like, how's it going? We cool? Okay, all right.
And the gloves back on. Yeah, okay.
Yeah, okay, all right. And then when it's like, we all know when there's sort of a decibel shift, there's like a volume when it like kind of tips over, and then we can be like, whoa, 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 whoa. Then you can get between, like literally, I'm gonna get between your bodies. I'm putting my hand here. Like again, this is no longer the time for like lobbying. Hey, stop that. Hey, you got to get off your chair.
So and if my 3-year-old is witnessing this and then proceeds to mimic it, at that moment, what do you recommend I tell my 3-year-old?
Yeah, say, oh, you're noticing it's sister and brother?
It's brothers, all 3 boys.
Okay. So, oh, you're noticing how your brothers were fighting with their bodies. Yeah, what did you see? Yeah, you saw them do that. What else did you see them do? Yeah. I mean,
Observe, yeah.
Yeah, like, that's what they did. Mm-hmm. Like, there's a lot of like, oh, I think you're showing me X when you have small children. And they'll tell you if you're wrong. Like, no. Because look, may none of your children ever get into a physical altercation. And if they should, that should not be the first time they ever take a hit or give a hit. Mm-hmm. I'm a big proponent of defensive martial arts for children, particularly for girls, because let's face it, that threat is real. And it's scary to be in a situation where somebody is coming at you physically. Most of us will have the innate survival response of freezing, right? So the freeze response where like you don't know, deer in the headlights, right? And the freeze response is a common predictor of like a PTSD type reaction because, victims will say like, why didn't I do anything? Well, it's actually totally normal for the body to freeze in the face of a threat. Your body has subconsciously chosen the most efficacious outcome or the outcome that's most likely to get you through it alive, right? Which is don't do anything or be in this rigid place. So we actually have to, as young people, learn how to mobilize our energy in a situation where there's a threat and to not be afraid and to know that I can recruit my strength if someone's coming at me. My now 11-year-old, when she was in preschool, the running joke was that if the wind blew too hard, she'd fall down crying. Like she was such a delicate little flower. And she started karate at age 4 when we started in our dojo. And just, I think like 2 years ago, she was like in 2nd grade or 3rd grade, something was going on in the playground where some kids were getting up in a friend of hers face. And they were kind of like making kind of threatening gestures. They weren't actually hitting the kid, but they were kind of doing this. And my oldest got between them and like blocked their punches and then went and got a teacher. And I was like, Okay,
Wow.
wow. Like she moved toward, right? She didn't freeze, she moved toward. So like, I think there's a lot of value in supporting and nurturing healthy expressions of
Yes.
physicality and aggression, right?
And props to
Um,
her for not just being a bystander. So much
I
easier
know.
to do. That's huge.
I know. I'm still gobsmacked that she was able to do that because I don't know if I would have done that, honestly.
Yeah. Most people
You
try
know?
to avoid being the next person that could be targeted because of that.
Bingo.
Okay, I know
Um,
Giselle, my associate director, who has a black
yeah,
belt,
she's asked.
actually, and she asked a question.
Yeah, Grizel's asking me, how important is it for everyone in the household/classroom to be on the same page when it comes to limit setting? To which I will say, what's more than 100%? Like, there's nothing more important than being on the same page with your co-parenting, co-caregiving team about what is or is not acceptable. If you're not on the same page, you are going to make everything is going to be harder. It's going to be confusing for the kid because they're not going to know which way is up. And it's going to create a lot of conflict, resentment, um, all kinds of difficulties in the co-caregiving team. Um, and look, it's okay for mommy and daddy, or mommy and Ima, or daddy and papa, or mama and grandma to have different preferences or to do things differently. Like you might have a different bedtime routine than your partner, right? Or, at school, different teachers may have different circle time routines, right? And kids will call you out on this. They'll be like, well, so and so doesn't do it that way. Or there's they, again, toddlers let you know where they stand. I like the way daddy did it better. I'm like, okay, cool. But remember, that's not in the sacrosanct limit basket. So you might have some willingness, convenience, problem solving differences, and that might be fine. Like mommy and daddy do things different ways. Yep, that's true. And when it comes to the all important sacrosanct limit basket, mommy and daddy need to be on the same page. And you need to explicitly say that to the child. Like sometimes they'll go fishing for answers, right? Like if one of the hard limits is no sweets before dinner or no snacks before dinner, and then they get that limit from you, and then they go to the other partner, you know, you can say like, mommy and daddy say, or daddy and papa say, no sweets before dinner. You can always invoke the other parent for those sacrosanct ones. And if you're not on the same page with your co-parent or co-caregiving team, there is no time like the present to figure out what's in that basket, and what's not. And remember, like there's, it's like at the self-checkout line, it's like 12 items max. Like I think there's like 5 to 6 items max in the, unassailable limit basket. Um, and you and your partner may or may not be on the same page about what's in that basket, as well as what's in the sort of optional willingness, values, convenience basket. So take some time to do that. Write it out. You could even make it tangible by putting a family charter, or family constitution, or family rules somewhere where everybody's clear about it. And then it's like, let's look at the list, and then it's not me or you, or it's not a power struggle. It's like, yeah, that's number one on the limits list. We always wash our hands after we go potty. Yeah, we just always do. Always. Um, yeah, it's very tricky. And that's a big one. Uh, that's a big one that can cause a lot of conflict. And if there's, sort of irreconcilable stuff, sometimes parents really want some of these more fungible ones to go into the limit basket. And it's like, okay, well, if you're going to do that, are you prepared to go to the mat every time? Like, because that's now part of your full-time job as a parent is, pretty much every time that's going to be, you're going to need to follow through with that pretty religiously, you know? I think another important piece here too is having developmentally appropriate expectations. Sometimes parents will put things in this limit basket and expect that their child will be able to follow that limit again with a verbal command on the first try consistently, and be really upset that the child doesn't do that. Or sometimes the child is able to do that and sometimes they're not. And the truth is, development is very patchy. The first 5 years of life is the most rapid period of brain development that we go through in our entire lives, full stop. Like, think about newborn to first grade, right? Like, you start with what's basically still a fetus and end with a person who can toilet themselves, can get themselves dressed, has ideas and opinions, is learning how to read. Like, that's the first 5 to 6 years of life. So brain development is going through a lot of twists and turns, and it's not consistent. So sometimes 2-year-olds can follow a verbal direction given once on the first command, and sometimes they can't. Sometimes they can share voluntarily, sometimes they can't. Sometimes they can stop themselves from an impulsive behavior, and a lot of times they can't. So being developmentally appropriate in your expectations and recognizing, just how difficult it is for children under the age of 5 to regulate their emotions and withstand the impulse to do something forbidden will help you in figuring out what goes in this bucket, what goes in the limit basket, and how much help do my kids need to execute on those limits.
Other questions for Rebekka?
Hi, this is Tiffany Yu. Thank you so much, Rebekka. Your talk is really helpful. I have a question. It's kind of related to what you were just talking about with you making sure you and your co-parenting team are all on the same page. But so my daughter's 3.5, and we'll go on play dates. She's at school all day. We go to the playground. Like, what do you do when they're observing behaviors that other peers are doing that might not be something that you really advocate, or it might be crossing a limit that you want to set? Like, for example, if I don't know, you see like a kid hitting somebody else, or like running into the street, and then they'll say like, oh, but so and so like is allowed to do that, or did that, and like how do you reconcile that with your toddler?
Yeah. Well, look, so there's reality, right? So like I said, nothing's more difficult than another person. Other people have different limits, values, and standards. In other families, yeah, they might have different rules. Yes, so and so is allowed to do that. And in our home, we do it differently. And then hopefully you have, kind of good reasons for what you do. In our home, we do it this way because, right? Because of health, safety, cleanliness, managing big feelings, managing limits, or managing problem solving, or whatever is your reason. This is our family value, right? For example, so my last name is Helford. It can be helpful to have like a little family motto. So our little family motto is Helfords help each other, right? Helps if it's got alliteration. Like I've had people like, oh, the Kleins are kind or whatever, right? So that's a family value. And so, if my kids, they'll come home and they'll tell me like so and so was mean to me and da 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 da, or so and so didn't do what the teacher asked, or so and so made a yucky face at me. I'll be like, oh yeah, that's so tricky that kid did that. And remember, health words help each other. So how can we help each other in our home? Or if my kids are having a hard time being kind and helpful with each other, I'll be like, what do health words do? Health words do what? So like you can name, other people have other norms. Or yes, that child is doing that thing. And maybe they're not getting enough help to be safe, right? Or maybe they're not getting enough help to be kind with their words and bodies. That'll happen a lot, right? Where my kids will come home and they'll be like, this one kid, they always tell you about that one kid in class who has a hard time keeping their hands to themselves, or who has a hard time, being quiet when the teacher's speaking, right? And, I try to give those kids the benefit of the doubt and say, sounds like that kid might need more help with that. Sounds like they might need more help keeping feelings safe, keeping bodies safe, finding their quiet when the teacher is talking. And, and then I would insert whatever is our family value, whatever is our limit. Because kids are going to see a lot of things and they're going to come to you to check it out. They're going to be asking you, what's our family rule? What's our norm? How come they're allowed to do this and I'm not? And you know what? It's incumbent on us as parents to have a good reason, because it's only going to get harder as they get older. You're going to get, well, how come so-and-so has a phone and I don't? And because I said so, it wasn't convincing when I was a kid, and it's not convincing now. So, my kids are older. I have good reasons for why they don't have phones and why they're not going to have phones until they're at least in 8th grade, stuff like that. Are there other things that your 3.5-year-old is seeing, Tiffany, that you have specific questions about or that they've brought to you?
No, that you captured it. It's just generally, yeah, she'll just come home and she'll do something and we'll say, where did you get that from? Or she'll say something, and then she'll say, oh, well, so and so did this. Or, it might even be in the moment. Something as innocent as like maybe it's a special situation, we're like eating ice cream before dinner or something.
Yeah.
Like, how come we're allowed to do this now,
Yeah. Yeah, well, you know what? It's a special occasion. It's a special treat because fill in the blank. It's a sometimes thing. And we can do things sometimes because we're modeling flexibility. Or they'll come home, they'll do a thing. They say, that's a thing. Tell me. And here's the Columbo, the head, you're doing that. Where did you see this? Or who did that? Or what, and they'll tell you, yeah, so-and-so may do that. And in our house, we do X. So notice everything I did there. Fast food rule. I'm acknowledging what they saw. Yes, you did see that. You did see your friend do that. And there's an and, not a but, right? Because the only good thing that comes after a but is a conga line. Kids know, right? So it's an and. The limit and the feeling go together with an and. So yes, you did see your friend do that. And insert what the family limit is phrased in the positive. So in our family, we use soft hands, or in our family, we keep bodies and feelings safe, right? Well, but why can't I? Yeah, well, if we did that, would it be keeping bodies and feelings safe? No. So we can't do it in our family. Something like that.
Okay, that's so helpful. Thank you so much.
You're welcome. Kids are checking stuff out, right? They are figuring out the parameters of the world. They're new here. They're trying to figure out what the rules are. And it's sort of like being in a foreign country where you're learning the language, you're trying stuff out, we may have had experiences of engaging in a cultural faux pas in another country. And we learn pretty quickly by people's disapproving looks like, oh, that's not something we do here. Cool. Trial and error, right? We sort of take it for granted that we understand these invisible rules in the world, but our toddlers don't. We know that there's an invisible wall where the sidewalk ends and the street begins. Our toddlers don't. They don't see that wall. They don't know that an octagonal red sign that says STOP means I pause my body, right? So we're helping, in a way, think of yourself like a cultural intermediary, right? Between sort of magic toddler land, like, because for toddlers, everything's amazing, and the real world, right? So like, yeah, the world is amazing and you get to do all these cool things and you can jump and you can run. And that's why they're always saying, look at me, look what I can do. The world is their oyster and you can't run in the street, right? We stop at the corner. or we stay out of the cabinet under the sink, right? Things like that. They don't know. They don't know about these invisible rules. So how are you going to find out about an invisible rule? You're going to bounce into it, or you bounce off of it by running headlong into it. And running headlong into something usually doesn't feel very good. Anybody else have a specific what about? Oh, Anya, I can't hear you.
Sorry. Thank you so much, Rebekka. You've given us so much to think about and so many great scripts to use. I'm excited for our team. I'm excited that we got this recorded so our caregivers, our students, our teachers, and my students can also benefit from this. Thank you for your time. And
Yeah,
again, we have so much food for thought right now. Appreciate it.
absolutely.
Thank you, Rebekka.
Absolutely.
Thank you all for joining. I know it's a tricky hour. Thank you all.
Yeah, you're welcome. And if I can be of any help to any of you later on, feel free to hit me up. You know how to get in touch with me. I'm available privately as a parent coach and consultant, also for individual trauma therapy. And I do parent ed and professional development for educators and caregivers.
Thank you so much. We so
Yeah.
appreciate it. And we're looking forward to your reading list as well.
Oh, yeah. It's good stuff on there. All right. Take care, and I will email to both. I will email to y'all the link where you can find all of the slides as well.
Thank you. Thank you
Yeah,
so much. Bye-bye,
yeah.
Rebekka. Thank
All
you
right.
all for
Take care,
joining.
everyone.
Bye-bye.
Okay. Bye.